This is Geek Gab with your host, Daddy Warpig. I am back. Geek Gab for Saturday, March 7th, 2026. Today we have got in a rare return to the studio, Dornall, our former co-host. We have also got the great and legendary Jeffro Johnson and his co-conspirator, RuleofThule. Welcome to Geek Gab. Today we're going to be talking about winning secrets, the greatest, the most unsung body of knowledge in TTRPG history. We're talking about the book itself is discussing, contains within its glowing pages the buried secrets long thought lost to mankind of how to run a perfect campaign if your players are up to the challenge. Secrets that have been unearthed, identified, and are within the pages of this tome explained so that you can run a campaign for the ages, run a campaign for years and years indefinitely, while your players will be compelled to come back week after week. They will be compelled to plot, to plan, to dream up in their minds compelling designs of such cunning inspiration to go out into the world, to be motivated themselves, to drive the action of your world, that you yourself as game master will not have to spend all your time developing your own stories. Yep. Developing your own long-running sitcom series, your own long-running storylines. You can allow your players to drive the action of your world. And one of the original secrets, one of the basal secrets of this is what people have called 1-for-1 time, or 1-to-1 time. That is, when a week passes in the real world, 1 week passes in the game world. Now, some people have come forth to say that this is impossible, that no game, no matter how constituted, no matter how predicated, no matter how established, can even possibly be run according to this principle. Well, I got exasperated this morning. It bubbled up in my soul. 5 years, 6 years of frustration at hearing this line repeated by people who did not know. Not people who did not know about the ongoing and successful experiments of the group of gamers known as the Bro SR, but people who did not know of not just an experiment, but of a shipping and successful commercial tabletop role-playing game from the early 90s. Yay! From 1990 to 1995, the Torg role-playing game, role-playing the Possibility Wars. The Torg, and I posted about this to Twitter because I get every now and then frustrated, and I may not say much on critical subjects that I am interested in. I spend most of my time making jokes, sharing interesting stuff, and people will say, well, you're not a real role-playing Twitterer because you don't post about role-playing games all the time. And I say, yes, because I love role-playing games. And I don't post all the time about role-playing games because I am deadly serious about them. And I only post when I have something worth posting. And that was today. And this is the post. This is the tweet. Allow me to read it to you that you also may be edified. The Torg Infiniverse campaign and every single published sourcebook, module, and the Infiniverse newsletter itself ran on a one-to-one campaign time from April of 1990 until it ceased publication in 1995. Allow me to elaborate just a bit. A source book that was published in August of 1990 was current as of August of 1990. A source book that was published in February of 1992 reflected the state of the war in February of 1992. For behold, the war changed month to month, every month, from April of 1990 to the end of the game in 1995. The invaders advanced and took territory. The invaders were driven back and lost territory. People were killed. People were replaced. Armies were defeated. Modules were published in specific months, which is the official month that module took place, specifically and chronologically. And the results of the players who played those modules in their home campaign were sent in by game masters, and those became the official results of that module in the official campaign world in the month in which those modules took place. Every month of adventuring, GMs sent in the results of what their players did that month. And those results went into a big computer program, a big spreadsheet, and became the official campaign results of all the players of the game for those months in the month in which they took place for the entire Torg official campaign, one-to-one time. And the High Lords, the bad guys, were slowed down or pushed back or advanced based on what every single reported campaign, how they succeeded or failed in that month, one for one time for 6 years of game time. Some 6,000 to 10,000 fans across the world, literally in Japan, Russia, all over Europe, America, South America, across the world, Australia, across the world playing with their GMs submitting results of published modules and monthly adventuring, GMs voting on potential developments in the official campaign, and monthly and later quarterly updates on the changing world map in the war, all running on one-to-one time. It can be done, and anyone who says otherwise is fooling themselves. That is my tweet on the Torg role-playing games Infiniverse campaign. That is my tweet about one-to-one time and why it can work. And Winning Secrets of the book that is currently in Kickstarter that we're going to be discussing today contains all of the experiences of the Bro SR from 2020 to 2026, a full 6 years, January 2020 to January 2026, a full 6 years of experience with one-to-one time, not on a vast scale the way these people were doing it, but how you can do it at home and manage it in your home campaign so that you do not have to depend on an official company running a campaign, but so you can do it for yourselves. So, our three guests, Dornall, Jeffro Johnson, and RuleofThule. Let's go ahead and start with Jeffro Johnson. I don't think I've been that explicit about Torg and the Infiniverse campaign before. I don't think I've given out that much information about how the Infiniverse campaign has worked. How does it feel to have something supporting one-to-one time, having been run already in the early 1990s?
Well, I think that's just you're playing into the hands of my critics. We're big. They're going to say this is evidence I didn't discover anything or invent anything. We've always played this way now. So, you're sinking my book here. I don't know what to say.
Well, see, unfortunately for them, I was there in the discussions from the beginning. So I remember when the discussion around these concepts was, no one ever played that way. In fact, it's impossible to play that way. It just can't be done.
If I may provide a ready-made counter argument, which is the same thing I said and thought when I first met you and you told me about Torg. I said, nobody's ever heard of Torg and nobody plays Torg.
No, Torg wasn't alone though. All jokes aside, the Car Wars universe from Steve Jackson Games was 50 years into the future, and its timeline moved forward with real time. And so when I went back and played that game, you could pick a particular year and say, oh, okay, all the gadgets that had been published at that point are in play, or you could maybe detail it further and say, okay, well, when would this have come out, and when would this thing have been available? Yeah, I don't know. You could retroactively determine how the game played at any given point in time, and use that as actual world building and gameplay resource. Traveler had Traveler News Service. I think the Journal of the Travelers Aid Society also had a similar presumption. But like these games here, I guess this is the thing where the Bro SR
Shadowrun did the same thing.
As detailed in Winning Secrets here, the place where we departed from what these companies were doing, they held on to the intellectual knowledge that made it possible to generate this stuff yourself, to make to generate the sort of the lore of the world and the background information. This is something that Fluid the Druid, who DM'd Trilopulus for a year or two back in the day when we first stumbled upon these gameplay dynamics, he was talking about how GDW had the Game of Games, or like, no, not the Game of Games. What was it? It was just this monster free-for-all World War III game that they played, and then the world history for the Twilight 2000 and then the Traveler 2300 games actually came out of this game like raging out of control. It was like a secret game. They never published any details about it. The player base was dependent on this company to give all of the lore and everything, rather than having the individual game groups generate their own model fantasy world themselves. So I guess that would be the real answer. Is we brought to light the secret techniques that game designers that operated in the 80s and 90s were aware of, but actually kept secret from the player base, because giving players the secrets of how these campaigns actually work, by people that are actually high-level gamers. I think the theory is that this being public knowledge would undercut their ability to turn a profit. But yeah, I don't want to leave Rule of Thule out of the discussion here.
Well, yeah, that's a good point about like two good points have been brought up so far. One is about how the conversation has changed so much since 2020, and in the book, one of the things that's included is sort of what I call the practical history, which is it's not like just some boring like here's what happened and then this happened. It's like you're being taken through the steps of discovery, of the findings, of the development of these ideas. And as you're reading through the practical history, you can see the arguments that are levied against what they're doing. You can see how the entire conversation is completely different now. It's such a, I mean, I don't know how to put this, but it's like there's such a huge contrast. Like talking to a guy that 5 years ago was saying like the complete opposite stuff. Now it's just like they're all over the map.
I wanted to dig into, so the history is really important and really interesting, but frankly interesting to a certain set of people. But there's also the promise of the actual winning secrets and how they help. Are you guys also delving into, similarly to the Umbros and the Broser, how to actually implement these things, how to actually put this into practice?
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Yeah, and I'll follow up as well.
Okay, good, awesome. Now you remember I guess we'll go year by year. 2020, I use one-to-one time myself, and I'm like, man, this completely changes the game, and it had a lot of now today everyone would say, oh well, one-to-one time is only for large campaigns with like lots of people in it. But we in 2020 we're seeing benefits to it even in small group play. And a lot of people are like, they're rushing for any excuse not to use it, right? Like this is like Chesterton's fence. Like if I could see the reason for why the fence there, then I can tear the fence down and not feel bad about it. Like that's which I don't think is in the spirit of what G.K. Chesterton was writing personally. But
and that's a hard pill to swallow. Like as someone who is a by nature a fence remover.
Yes,
I'm the type of person who says, yeah, but we can just remove the fence and then find out why it was there.
Oh, we found out.
Yeah,
that's a tough pill to swallow. That's really hard.
Part of the book is that we've been finding out since 1980. So
yeah, if the smarter type of reformer is the one that knows why the fence is there before he tears it down and is able to give the reason, then what kind of person like discerns, hey, maybe we need to rebuild a fence? Like how much more intelligent would that be? But anyways, in 2020, we stumbled into this and it raised a lot of questions. People that were curious were like, well, what can we do with this? And they started their own campaigns to explore it themselves. Everybody said that there was no point to this. And in 2021, we found new possibilities in gaming that derived from it that no one had anticipated. which was what we now call Bronstein Play. And then that was we did 2022. We had all these long running campaigns. One-to-one time did in fact make it easier to run a campaign for a long time. 2022, all of those campaigns converged into a month-long event, Broven Loft. It was like, which none of us expected to happen. None of us expected it to play out the way that it did. It was, and I don't think anybody since has done something that crazy. Then 2023 would be when How to Win at D&D was published, a tract. It was just enough information to make people mad. And you were talking about like, oh, well, does Winning Secrets include information on how to do this stuff? And man, yes. I mean, we're like everybody in the scene, we're painfully aware that people outside of it have no idea how to do this. We really struggle unless they're like RuleofThule and they're already looking at kind of the same problems as we are. They've been playing games that are starting to approach what we're doing, but fall short of it. And then they hear what we're doing and they're like, oh yes, I am certain that this idea is going to pertain to what I'm doing. Those people can understand it. Other people like hear what we're doing and they immediately go on the warpath. They're very angry. But 2023, I'm going to recap this just to answer the question. I'm sorry that it was such a long answer, but 2023, my book came out and it wasn't what anybody wanted because it was just like the cultural anthropology, an argument that this is the way the games of the 70s were intended to be played and that this was lost. And I would like to think that it proved the point so well that nobody argues that anymore. But at the time before it was written, we routinely had people confronting us online and saying, "There's no such rule in the game."
Right? It's not even in the books. There's no rule. You're just making this up.
I think that argument died, and How to Win at D&D accomplished that, but nobody appreciated it at the time. Like there's one reviewer maybe on the book that was like, oh, this book was, I bought 20 copies. I give them out like religious tracts, and this completely solved all the problems I had in wargaming and tabletop role-playing games. That's like one guy was like, it worked magic, but everybody else was mad because they wanted patron play. They wanted someone to talk about the high level characters. And at the time I thought we had a lot of fun the past 2 years, but our understanding of these gameplay dynamics is still half baked. I thought that the way we were doing it was burning out referees. I thought that the way that we were doing it was flattening the campaigns so that there wasn't a game going on anymore. I thought that the way that the Brostar was doing it at that time was departing very far from what was outlined in AD&D. And when I started voicing these concerns, everybody in the Brostar got really mad at me because, they were furious. They were so furious I could barely conduct playtests anymore. People forget this. But I was looking at everything that I thought was wrong, and I was just playing. And throughout that year, I was like, how could I make this something that other people could replicate at their tables outside of the Brostar? That was my chief focus, wrangling it. And as I explained in the John Mollison video over at Joy of Wargaming, I realized that D&D was a Bronstein, that the long campaign was a Bronstein, and that if we needed to know more about how Bronsteins worked in order to solve the problems of the larger D&D campaign. And and then I think events since then have proven that I was right. But the only way to prove that was to do nothing for a year. And that was like the most helpful thing I ever did in this project, was to do nothing. It was really the best bang for the buck.
Was that, I mean, obviously you had your reasons for stepping away, and I don't blame you. I don't think anybody does. What did you learn over that year? Like, did you watch it, or did you just sort of, I know that you probably had a lot of the book written, at least in your head. Did you observe a bunch of things over the year and then write, or did you just use it as a break? Or
Oh,
put another way, what did you learn in the past year of just sitting back?
well, I think what's happened is, well, a couple of things has happened. In and I think we're seeing it right now. The real developments in the hobby space do not get oxygen, and they do not get celebrated when they occur. And I looking back in 2024, there was this giant uptick in conversation around the BroSR, and people doing their own YouTube shows that recycled BroS ideas in a slightly different way. And people sort of imitating our kind of bravado and posturing and assertiveness. And it was massive. And, before that, I was just I was using the online stuff to compare notes with people. I needed to hear from other people what they were doing. I was watching what was going on in other campaigns to get, to see where we were getting traction, what was working, what didn't work. And I really wanted to solve the problem. And then in 2024, there was so much noise. There was so much counter signaling. There was so much ankle biting. There was so much, there were like 5 splinter groups that ended up each one trying to starve all the rest of oxygen. Anytime somebody in one group came up with something, all the other splinter groups would sort of stonewall it, right, and kind of pretend it wasn't happening. And so I feel like my absence from the hobby for the past year caused all of those groups to just sort of like shut down, because they didn't have a host to feed off of anymore. And then the people that were actually doing the work to move the hobby forward, they were just doing it without talking about it. And so now, suddenly today, with everything coming together, people may not talk about it openly, but they know who is doing constructive work in the scene, and they know who were kind of tagging along or getting in front of the parade or muddying the waters. I think it's pretty self-evident now, and people just don't have any patience for that anymore.
Yeah, I think a good example of just doing it without crowing about it too much, ironically, is the Trolopulus campaign. Fluid the Druid is still there, Macho Mandalf, class act, great dungeon master. And we've been sort of enjoying the fruits of those experiments, right? At the end of the day, and I hope this is the same for most groups, I hope at the end of the day, when everything's, when all this information's out there, when all the D&D YouTubers have their copy of Winning Secrets on the bookshelf behind them in the video next to their 6 editions of D&D, I hope that everybody can just enjoy these games that they've been able to elevate to this level, thanks to all the fighting of ankle biters, all the crazy hard work and everything, right, like that. Because speaking as one of the many people who just sat down and tried it and enjoyed it. Like it works. Like this is great stuff.
I am still angry about these YouTubers who took all of these concepts that they got directly from Broasar discussions and copied them and then lied about their origin and said, oh, this is something I just noticed
Yeah.
in AD&D.
Yeah,
and
and I don't play AD&D by the way, but
without even bothering to credit Griff Morgan. I mean, how could they?
and then deleted comments who
What?
said, no, you got this from, you know, Jeffro, you got this from the Bro SR, you got this from, you know, specific people who not only noticed the rule, but applied the rule and put it into experimented with it, not just taking the rule as it was written, but experimenting with how to use the rule. Your interpretation and what you're saying is the result of, you know, cumulatively thousands of man hours of experimentation, and you're just taking the fruit of that and claiming you discovered this specific interpretation and this specific application, this specific way to do that on your own. And it's like, no, you didn't, because it took lots and lots of trying out how to use this rule to arrive at the best way to do it. It wasn't obvious the best way to do it. It was, you know, yes, this is one-to-one time and we can do that, but how do you deal with downtime? How do you deal with, you know, what people want to do in downtime? How does a DM deal with downtime requests without getting burned out? How do you deal with all these things? And you don't just notice that in the AD&D DMG. And the lying about it really
Yeah, and you know, to people that are familiar with using these rules, with using these ideas, it's very obvious when somebody is doing that, because these pieces, these like elements that you need to elevate your campaign, they perform certain functions in isolation, but you actually they don't really make that much sense unless they're all sitting together in the same place. So like you need like basically you can't have half the engine running and then half of it, you know, not running or absent, or you're not thinking about it. The whole thing has to be running like in conjunction with all the elements. So it's totally ridiculous, you know, from the perspective of somebody who's really experienced using this stuff, to watch these videos of these people saying, "Oh yeah, you know, they're talking about one-to-one time," but it's like, okay, why? You know, what do you get from that? What's the downstream effects of that? You know, they clearly don't understand it.
Right. And you've got a kind of you can't put new wine into old wineskins sort of dynamic here, because we went and did all of these things at once, and the parts that flew out of control, you know, we found best practices for each part of these things to kind of get them working in conjunction with each other. And they even recently, like DM Serious, like just found just one beautifully elegant thing to tie it all together to create less friction, less drag on the system as a whole. It's really exciting development there. We know because everyone tells us every time we talk about RPGs, we know that the culture of RPGs is one of system doesn't matter. That a great DM can take a bad system and make a good campaign out of it, and that even a good game or a game that everybody loves, you can change anything in it, and it's not going to break your campaign. And so there's sort of a buffet mentality, a junk drawer mentality about everything that's ever been developed in RPGs. And when you sit down to game master a campaign, you will assemble a Frankenstein's monster of everything that you like, and it's going to be perfect. It's going to be the perfect thing for your table, and no one can tell you how to do it different. It's up to you to decide how to do any little piece of this. And so then now you have a group of people saying, oh, wait, you got to take several things and they all have to be working together, or you're not going to see the magic happen. You're not going to see this extraordinary thing happen. One, they don't believe that anything extraordinary can happen. They can't imagine it. And that's
the problem. They can't imagine it.
Yeah. We in 2020, when we were first exploring AD&D, and I said, hey, I tried this and this is what happened. And when people would come at me and be like, why would you do it that way? That's obviously stupid. That's Gygax at his worst. Like, why would you do that? And like, I would say the vast majority of role players can't imagine the game working if you just tried it. Like they can't imagine raw an approach of rules as written working for any RPG. They think that it can only work if the game master is routinely putting his thumb on the scales or rigging things or changing rules, that it's going to ruin everything if you just follow things faithfully. So that's I don't know. It's kind of it leads to a kind of a metaphysical, philosophical, spiritual discussion very quickly when you observe the worldview differences of the advocates and the detractors. There's a very stark battle line there, akin to, oddly enough, the alignment rules that everybody in my entire life, whenever they've come up, has told me that it's a stupid rule and it doesn't make any sense and it's not realistic at all. Well, it turns out that RPG discussions fully encapsulate law versus chaos in the post-Bro SR era. So no one saw that coming.
That's incredible. In fact, early on in our discussions, when we started having these fights over how to play or whether it's the right way to play, we immediately grasped onto alignments as a reflection of what they're doing. Like, I think me and Dundermoose were talking about something in the back channel, and I was like, dude, it's just he doesn't speak your alignment language. Like, you guys aren't speaking same language. And like every time someone said that, it clicked. It's like, yeah, this is actually what we're talking about. Alignment is real. And this goes and I believe this circles back to the book, because I noticed that there's a third author who isn't here today, B-Dubs. So are we going to have a discussion of that in the book, of the culture implications, the moral implications, the alignment language,
Yes.
so to speak?
Yes,
No.
100%.
He tackles this head on, so you will not be disappointed.
Also, this is actually the capstone for the book. It's placed exactly at the end. It's sort of like the super summary of everything from this perspective. It really makes the book, honestly.
Sort of, by the way, if you've actually read this far, you might have noticed something that ties all this together. Here's how it is.
And Jeffro, a minute ago, he was saying, he had a really good point about, when you're trying to play the game this way, when you're trying to take the game kind of seriously and dig into it, that you are immediately confronted by these, very, like, you're confronted by all these high-minded, complex issues that require a level of sophistication in language and philosophy that is way beyond what like an ordinary person needs to just play the game. So that's discussed. A lot of this is discussed in the book. I mean, it's like rounded out, and you can see how these elements come into play. But I was thinking about this lately because it's such a huge contrast between how just ordinary curious people react to these ideas versus the crazed resistance that we see from the guilty contingent in the hobby. And I was thinking earlier, Doranol, you asked about basically, if I was to re-summarize your question, it's like, what's like the practical, is there some practical help for just a guy that wants to play RPGs in this book? Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking about that. We spend so much time addressing the high-minded concepts and these ideas. We spend so much time addressing like the crazed resistance, like framing our arguments to address their objections and all this stuff. And we don't really, we don't give enough attention to just the normal, well-adjusted guy that is interested in the hobby. And I would say that Winning Secrets, like, it gives ordinary hobby participants a reason to consider RPGs as a real contender for their leisure time, you know, in competition with all the other things they could be doing. Like we're giving you a reason to care about this game. If you think about the way things, you know, there's a big joke in the hobby, like when you're playing in the conventional way, you know, in the conventional dynamics, it's very burdensome. It's like there's a lot of time wasting, I guess, involved. There's a lot of just cruft involved in moving the game forward and like trying to get something done. And everything's structured in a way that severely limits player agency and essentially limits their participation. And there's a joke that's I'm trying to think. It's like I'm blanking on it. It's like you can fit 30 minutes of fun into 4 hours of game. That's what people say about RPGs.
Yeah, right. Yes.
So if you think about just a regular guy's perspective on this, that doesn't sound like a good deal. That's not a good bargain. And especially if you look at, you know, a competing medium, let's say video games, have basically solved this problem of where you pretty much get 30 minutes of fun for each 30 minutes of gameplay, right? They kind of solved this problem. So like just on a simplistic utilitarian basis, from the perspective of a regular guy, RPGs look really bad. They look like a really bad way to spend time.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but
yeah, go ahead.
There is one easy way for them to have solved this problem.
I was about
to, they solved it by through agency.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to get at. I was basically saying that like, so that's like the setup. You know, RPGs seem like really slow, bad video games, basically, and that's how people approach them. And you know, Winning Secrets, or let me put it a different way. Like, what if there was a different way to play an RPG for 30 minutes and then be consumed, like absolutely on fire for a week, like obsessed about that 30 minutes of gameplay? Like, you're getting more than 30 minutes of fun out of 30 minutes of gameplay. What if there was a way to do that? When you toss out conventional play dynamics and replace them with a better approach, you can consistently achieve this exact result. And we see it all the time. We see people say stuff like, I mean, I wrote a campaign like report basically, and it's pretty dry. It's not, I wrote it in an explanatory style so that people could understand what we were doing. And a guy responded to that saying, I would kill to be in this campaign. Yeah, that was just a campaign report. He wasn't even in the campaign yet. He is now. We picked him up. But there's people all the time that say this was the best gaming experience I've ever had in any medium. In you know, counting everything, not just in RPGs, but in anything. And the methodology, excuse me.
I mean,
the methodology that's presented in this book allows you to basically open up to unlock the potential that that is unique to this medium that no other medium can accomplish. It allows you to like run on cylinders you didn't even know you had. And that's why like that is my big thing about, like, to a normal guy, just a normal person interested in this hobby. Maybe you're sitting around waiting for the smell to go away. This is like hope for you. This is a way for you to actually get something really great out of your time and out of your, your mental energy and effort. You can invest in this. You can invest yourself in this hobby in a way that you can't do in other mediums. Like, you
Yeah,
can get
no,
so much out of it.
I want to add on to this thing about the energy and the energy creation.
Yes.
Uh, now there was that time, and Dorna was there. I'm not going to digress on it too long, but like the theory with the time was that, oh, if we're using 1-to-1 time and we're strict about this, insanely strict, and the game, and there's multiple things happening in the gameplay at once, then players will demand to play more than just the weekly session. It's going to go from like people making up excuses for why they can't make the session, and you're like, why did my campaign die? It's going to flip over to, no, players are going to be texting you about the campaign
blowing
every
up
day.
your phone. Yeah.
Yes. And like I think the first time that we saw that happen was like, I was mad that these people came into my campaign and ruined Trilopulus, the city that was associated. It was the only thing I'd ever created in RPGs, and they wrecked it. And they thought it was hysterical, because I spent a year like making it hard for them to level up, and I gave them a base of operations in the undead quarter, and it just ended up killing PCs that took them 6 or 8 sessions to levels. And these are 6-hour sessions too, mind you. So it was a lot of investment down the drain. And I thought this was, but they came back. When I stepped away from the refereeing duties, like they destroyed the entire city. And they made minus Mandolf the capital of the campaign world. And so then me and Doran, we find this dungeon we've been exploring for many, many sessions turned out to be a nuclear missile silo, and we win, and in down, we called the referee. We said, okay, we want to go and launch, explore this thing further. We have the launch keys. We're gonna go figure this out. And so like we were playing on a Friday and a Saturday, and then as soon as we went over there and launched the missiles, then when Australia time came on, then they were he was conferring with that player to adjudicate what happened next. And that happened again and again, these things later on, when we had like the dragon eggs being heisted, that caused several days of nonstop activity where people were on my phone the entire time, and players going up against players. So like
brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
And people talk about these things to this day, but like when you don't have these options on the table as things that you can do, the game really becomes about players kind of show up, they can cooperate, and it's 6 against 1, and then the referee spends all his time devising dungeon environments and so forth that he thinks will be entertaining. But then, and you don't want to make it too hard, and you don't want to make it too easy. And then it's like the players show up, and then they figure out something really devious that the referee didn't anticipate, and they just ruin the thing you spent 5 or 10 hours working up. It's just completely ruined, and you're just all the time, you can't keep up with them anymore. Not when you're playing raw and they've become elite level power gamers, they can run circles around you. It's very difficult to challenge them. And so, but we jump over where you have like, oh, wait a minute, what if I wasn't responsible for the fun and for the entertainment, and the players weren't responsible to appreciate all the hard work that I put into making this fantasy world? What if instead the referee was just a referee, and the players provided the entertainment for each other by trying to beat each other in ways nobody's ever imagined before or ever had to deal with at the table. And that right there is the key. And no one that has been initiated into RPGs by real world role players would ever think to explore this. And anybody that suggests that they go in this direction at all will get shouted down as breaking some kind of weird rule about RPGs that is not really written down anywhere that I know of per se, but the culture, the people in the RPG scene will say, oh no, this is a violation against the way we do things, and you can't do that. You can't play this way. You can play any way you want as long as you're having fun. But if you do these things that the bros are talking about, well, that is not okay.
I think that's what Daddy Warpig was talking about. This phenomenon that Jeffro was just illustrating is basically a kind of learned helplessness. Like, you show up to the campaign, but you don't really have agency. So you learn not to exercise it. You learn that you have to get along with everybody. You learn that you have to sort of, go along in some kind of, the language they use is cooperative. They call it cooperative, but it's not really cooperative. It's like you're just, you're like in a chain gang,
Wow.
I do want to challenge that, and I've challenged Jeffro on this several times over the years, because when you're doing the core gameplay loop that took over the hobby, the adventure or the delve or the Shadowrun or whatever, you need to be cooperative. So in fact, the get along gang that is much maligned is optimal. Now that, to gainsay my own argument, that may be a local optimum. You may have a horizon problem, but the get along gang in many cases is optimal. On the other hand,
yeah, of course,
you always need a Fluid the Druid in your party, because it looks like an optimal cooperation scenario, but the truth is it's a prisoner's dilemma. And that's one of the things that one needs to fight against, because that is so strong. Because it's easy for someone like me to point and say, look, even if I recognize what you're saying, we're playing 3 hours this week, and B-Dubs calls it get the ruby. It's like, my character has this objective, and basically we're going to play against this objective, and so bring characters who align with that objective, and let's get it right. It could be the ruby,
Yeah.
it could be killing the dragon or whatever.
That's the advice.
So that's something you have to fight.
The DMV actually, Gygax says the players should get together, determine which characters are appropriate, available for that objective, and then like show up with the right tools, for the job.
Yeah,
absolutely. But the thing about player agency is that it's recognizing this agreement is not forever. This cooperation is not forever. It's for this mission. It's for like the near future, let's say. And the game is much bigger than that.
And that's broken immediately. Now, here I'm thinking all these out loud. That's broken immediately by one-to-one time, right? Because then it's not about forever, because the strict timekeeping and one-to-one timekeeping will break that idea that it's all forever, because you're not pausing time anymore.
Right. Well, yeah, just that few days of downtime between sessions is something that you get to do whatever you want. You're free from the of not being able to split the party.
Yeah, that's chain gang.
That's the conventional wisdom, is don't split the party, because it's so hard. It becomes impossible to play conventional games that way. But when you adopt one-to-one time, you're splitting the party every week. The party is split all the time, that you're outside of session and they're doing things now. I really think the problem with the RPG hobby, and you can see how this would come about by comparing original Dungeons and Dragons with Dave Arneson's The First Fantasy campaign, and in OD&D it goes on at length about how to set up the campaign, and a casual reader is going to think that the game is only about the dungeon delving thing. The referee maps out these gigantic dungeons, and then the players go into it, and we can maybe have a slightly improved understanding of the old school days, and say, oh well, they had multiple parties at large at once in the same campaign and delving in the same dungeons, and there's a lot of interesting things that come out of that. But at the same time, the OD&D rules strongly indicate that these exorbitant maintenance costs that your characters have to pay, you don't have to pay them anymore when you have a stronghold. The assumption is that these characters are going to build a castle somewhere on that map, and that there's already castles on the map that have high-level wizards with armies of white apes, at their disposal. People have allowed the dungeon adventure, which is a lot of fun, admittedly, but they've allowed that to displace what AD&D calls the campaign as a whole, the game as a whole. There's more game there that people failed to explore, and a lot of people stopped their characters when they reached name level and got the strongholds and the followers and stuff. If they made it to that point, they were like, you know what, this dungeon adventure stuff isn't fun at this level, and so I'm just going to retire this character now. That time and time again, entire campaigns would get retired when parties reached that level, because players didn't know what to do with these high level elements. And the fact is that high level play in D&D does not work without players being able to operate independently and against each other's interests. It does not work if you do not allow that. And the RPG hobby as a whole has forbidden the exploration of those kind of gameplay scenarios.
I actually think that that's a good, that's obviously an excellent point. But I would reframe that. I would take the opportunity right now to reframe that in terms of what Doronal was just talking about earlier about, the need to cooperate with the party and so on, which is, of course, correct. But when you, the way that I would put it is basically like when your character exists apart from some group that he's attached to, the meaning of role playing actually becomes clear only in that moment. So the meaning of what is your role, like what is your character doing? Like that's a real question when it's just your character. When it's it's downtime and you don't have to, you're not trying to sort of have a multiple compromise agreement with some other team so that you can get the ruby or whatever. When it's just your character and it's just your plans, it's just, your character's looking on the horizon, that really clarifies what your role is, not just in the campaign, but to yourself as well, like as a player.
Well, I'm gonna.
No, and he just gave away a thesis there. That I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Role-playing games don't even deserve to be called role-playing games, because the role that you play in a role-playing game is neutered. It has no energy to it. When you look back at David Wesley's Bronstein, this is the origin of the roles of what became role-playing games. And so when you had this foreign element enter the RPG hobby and then collectively forbid people from engaging in Bronstein style play because it did not suit their conception of what they wanted to do, that they wanted this phenomenon to be about. They actually eliminated the role playing in the role playing games. It's that dire, and it's only by going back to this thing. It's only in the context of a campaign, of a real campaign with multiple parties operating against each other's interests, that the assassin can like really stretch his legs and go perform his role.
I mean, and the paladin and the thief and really everybody. It just these classes, these roles, they don't really have that much impact in a party set, in like a little party adventure setting. Like,
yeah, let's take the paladin for example. I want to dig into that because I've been playing a lot of paladin lately, and it's the best class, and everybody should play paladin. But he doesn't necessarily work on the same level as the other characters. So,
yeah, exactly.
Basically, to
Like the
every other
ranger too,
to every character who is not lawful good, the paladin is a one-man wrecking force that is going to come into your domain, slay any evil creatures in it, including you if you are evil, and move on. Like he's written as like that knight errant of running or going around and causing problems. Like, yeah, the paladin's a problem solver, but if you're not lawful good, he is the problem. Instant conflict.
And then the druids, like, when you're on, when you're like, in the party game, you're like, woohoo, this guy can make sailing through the wilderness a breeze. Or, we're not going to get killed by these random encounters anymore. And if we need to run away, he can like cover our escape by all these different spells. They've got lots of them. But you turn them loose in your campaign and suddenly they're a menace. They're horrible. So there's a dimension to these classes in the AD&D game that you do not even get to experience if you've suppressed the campaign as a whole, the game as a whole.
It's satisfying to see it happen outside of just the inter-party squabble. Once I just want to tell people, like, once you start thinking outside of the session, great things happen. Let me share an anecdote with you guys. A good friend of mine, I'm actually meeting up to play board games later today. He's more of a war gamer, and he really likes like rules light, really simple RPGs. But I've been talking to him about these subjects. Like, yeah, I've been playing a lot of D&D 1E. We're discovering a lot, this and that. But I know he's a war gamer, so I've been talking to him about the winning secrets. And last night he tells me, hey, I was playing such and such a game where a different type of game, not a role-playing game, where we were all working on our own things, and and then it hit me that Brownstein stuff you were talking about isn't just another way to play. It's fundamental.
Wow. He really said that?
He said it. No, I used fundamental. He said integral. He's like, no, it's integral. And it blew my mind that like the message you guys are saying, the message that is in this book resonates. Like, people will get it. He was like, no, I get it now. Like, because I had described the Bronstein thing that I was doing before, and he's like, yeah, that sounds like a fun game. That sounds like a fun little game. And then last night he was like, it hit me, it's integral. And I said, yes. And I put the pieces together for him. I said, and you can have a ref if you want to keep your fog of war. You have a ref who has the big map and has all the pieces on the board, so that when two players meet up, he can go to those players and say, okay, your armies encountered each other. Let's fight. Let's run this fight. And I said, and it's just like a war game campaign, because Dungeons and Dragons is a war game campaign. The Bronstein element is fundamental. So, yeah. That's just an anecdote. Like, people get it.
and well, yeah, and it plays into what the meaning of the word campaign
Yes,
even is.
recovers the word campaign from whatever whatever people are using it to refer to now. They're basically just referring to dungeon delving or coffee shop
And,
chatting
and
or whatever.
and we talked about this 30
Um,
years ago. I remember talking to my high school friends, like, oh yeah, we know where campaign comes from. It's from war game campaigns, but we didn't really talk about what that meant or understood what that meant. We just acknowledged that it was a term from a type of game that preceded D&D.
Well, I'll give you here's a winning secret. This is a free one. A bonus winning secret for you. Now you can imagine, of course, having your D&D books and and then coming to this conclusion about the campaign, but you maybe want to know more. Like maybe you want to know more about this. So maybe you go back and like, well, hey, I know. The chainmail rules are standard equipment to the OD&D game. Maybe there's something in there about what a campaign is, and I hope this blows your mind. I hope like when I say this, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Now it's very, very simple and it's very, very, very subtle. But in chainmail, there's one sentence about campaigns. The chainmail rules, it's very similar to Boot Hill, because you look at Boot Hill and you're like, there's nothing here except the rules for gunfights, and that's it.
Mhm.
And you're telling me that this is an entire complete game? And like, well, yes, if you know what a Bronstein is, then it's complete. And John Mollison over at the Joy of Wargaming has done in-depth demonstrations of this being the case. But you go same story with chainmail. If you look at chainmail, there's one sentence on a campaign, okay, and it's talking about there's different ways that you could set up battles, and one might be that the referee picks a particular historical battle and says, okay, here's the forces, let's fight, and then two people come over and they play the game that the referee has devised. That's one way to do it. If you're competitive, you might have like some sort of point buy system, and the players are going to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to build my army out of a certain number of points of these values, and then we'll sit down and we'll play that out. But and you can have that battle be the battle that you play with the chainmail rules. But what is the campaign? The campaign is, okay, there is going to be a map. There will be forces moving around on that map, and then when the forces come in contact with each other, that will define a battle scenario, and you could play that scenario. That's it. That sentence is in there, and it's given to you as if everyone would naturally know how to do this and not need rules for it. And the great thing about this, like if you're lost, if you're I don't know where to begin, I'm scared, all I have is my miniatures rules, I don't know how to set up a campaign, I'm so weak, I'm so alone, I'm so lost, and no one shared the winning secrets with me. Well, okay, the D&D rules have everything you need. They have movement rules, they have army stats, they have leadership requirements, they have everything. You could just take the D&D rules, allow things to move around on a map, and then when they come in contact with each other, resolve the battle. Guess what? That's what we did. The moment we had one-to-one time and independent people moving around, that's the moment where we experienced for the first time an actual D&D campaign, and campaign in the sense of the sentence from the chainmail rules from way back.
Mm-hmm.
It was always there.
We are coming up to the end of the show. And so I'm going to ask for last thoughts, because I'm sure the show could go on for another 2 hours or whatever, but I know people have to be places. So I'm going to ask for last thoughts. Let's start with RuleofThule. Do you have any last thoughts?
I would just say that, the things that we're talking about are not inaccessible. There are a lot of high-minded ideas that are covered. People have already done the work. People have already run the experiments. People have already figured out what works and what doesn't. and you can replicate these. You can replicate the results that we're talking about. You can bring this kind of energy to your players, to your campaign, and honestly, it's easier to run the game this way. It's not full of the burdens of the conventional play dynamics. And that's really the best thing I can say about the book, is that it just makes everything easier and better.
Jeffro, do you have any last thoughts?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's exciting to be here at this moment. As I said earlier, How to Win at D&D was like just enough information to make people angry. Some people got it and went forward with it, but like it was only a small number of people. A lot of people said, "Oh, will you please tell me how to do it?" And so, the bros, we all got together and we made Broser, and that was as simple as possible. How to play in the style that we did, or what was originally called patron play. That was all there, and sort of a starter module, and we did that. But I feel like some people that were asking for, I don't know how to do it. I'm not sure entirely how honest those people were, because when we finally laid down a clear explanation of like, here's step by step what you do, and here are the play dynamics that you can expect to see. Some of these people that were demanding us to explain it, like they didn't try it. So I'm not sure what was going on with that. But some people did put this stuff to work. And I keep harping on this because I'm just so thrilled that it happened. I didn't know that this was happening. The book was done and I didn't know. But like the everything that we learned about Bronstein's was applied to the long-running D&D campaign, and I think there is a consensus emerging. I didn't have to baby it along. I didn't have to persuade everybody that I could see what was coming. I feel like the people that are running these campaigns and that are doing it the most successfully and producing the most excited players, people naturally see that and are like, I want that. And the people that have been struggling with some friction in their games, that something was a little bit off, thanks to that Dracaheim campaign that Thule was a part of, that Thule won, I feel like we flushed out a key piece of the puzzle to make all of this stuff really work. And now I'm digressing, but I'll wrap it up. All of that stuff that we argued about, diffusion versus convergence, I'm talking to people that have been following these discussions for a long time. By making the players write up the rumors to come out of their downtime action, and then having that be in a central sort of newsletter that tracks everything that's happening in the campaign, that everything that was bad about diffusion is ameliorated by this thing, because now everything that every player does, no matter where they are on the map, becomes gains some visibility and becomes something that every player can interact with, even if it's just to wonder about it. They are interacting with it, and so it builds on. Now we have not just the players providing serving as NPCs and adversaries for every other player, but also all of this activity is without the referee having to do a lot of heavy lifting. Everything that everybody does, even the most harmless downtime action, is now showing up in the news feeds for the campaign, that everybody can now just be confident that the things that they do are getting out, that people are able to engage with, and that these things, as documented in Thule's session report, these things do influence how everybody engage with the game, and it's producing better emerging narratives and better conflicts.
Okay. Sorry. You ended right when I needed you not to end. Because I started typing something up. I started typing a note up.
And now we hear click, click, click.
Yeah, for my own project.
That's okay. I'll save you. Too late. I'll save you. First of all, thank you, Jeffro, for asking me to come on and rejoin the Geek Gab for a special episode. I really appreciate that. Anybody who, any Geek Gab fans who's wondering where I was at, I'm around. I just retired from doing the show, but you may see me from time to time being good friends with Daddy Warpig. RuleofThule, absolute pleasure meeting you, speaking with you. I look forward to seeing your contribution in Winning Secrets. Anybody who wants to hear more of RuleofThule, that's Primeval Patterns at Substack. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. And Jeffro, I can't find you anywhere because you don't blog until we hit the $10,000 stretch goal, which we are almost 800 away from. So we're almost at that stretch goal of getting Jeffro Johnson role-playing game blogs back. And I don't know what the deal is, whether that's going to be one blog post or a year or you're just back forever. So I've already backed Winning Secrets. I encourage everybody listening to go back it. If you're listening to this show later and the campaign's already done, just find Cursova, order some copies, send one to your local library, give one to your friends, especially friends who don't play D&D because they're the ones that are going to make your best players. Absolute pleasure talking with you guys, and best of luck on this campaign.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be here.
I've already backed, so everybody else should absolutely go ahead and back themselves. I had really one thing to say about the game, about the information contained in Winning Secrets, and that's this. And this is very, very, very critical for you to know. You have to know this so you know why you should back the campaign. These principles have been tried out in literally dozens, maybe over 100 now, individual campaigns, full-fledged campaigns with hundreds of players that have been running now for 6 years. These are not armchair philosophers. This is not someone sitting in a chair smoking a pipe saying, you know what I just suddenly thought of might be good for role-playing games. These are people who have been playing in multiple campaigns from the beginning. And from those campaigns, other people went out and started their own campaigns. And other people heard about these principles and started their own campaigns without ever having played in any of the first or second or third or fourth generation campaigns. And people who applied these principles have gotten replicable, stable results. These are reproducible, battle-tested results. Typical games and typical campaigns fizzle out after 6 sessions on average. That's it. Most campaigns die after 6 sessions. And one of those is session 0, where you just sit around talking about character backgrounds and creating characters. These campaigns run according to the information in Winning Secrets, even when it was just being tested out, even when it was just being explored, even in the primitive form of these ideas, not even into the final and perfected form that you will get by buying this book. They made campaigns more interesting, more compelling, more stable, longer lasting than what is the run-of-the-mill for play today. You must realize this, because it tells you why you want to buy this book. It works as practical utility. It has been tested again and again, and it works. I don't know how to make it any more apparent. Dozens of campaigns, it works. Different kinds of DMs, it works. Hundreds of players, it works. They go out and start their own campaigns. Novice, neophyte DMs, people just jumping in as DMs without all of this advice that these YouTubers ladle on you. Just with Winning Secrets, they start campaigns. It works. You don't need to run your life by dozens of hours or hundreds of hours of YouTube videos telling you what to do. Winning Secrets works. I cannot make it any clearer than that. And that is why you should go buy a copy of this book. And I've already done so. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This has been Geek Gab for Saturday, March 7th, 2026. We are here every Saturday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. We are signing out for today. But don't you worry. Don't you fret. We will be back.